Jake, ready?
Thumbs up. We're all good.
Okay.
Got it? The thumbs ready?
Yeah, it's ready.
I'm gonna go sit down. I'll sit down near Jake just in case.
Okay.
So
You don't trust
today I
him.
wanted to talk about
He doesn't trust you.
competitiveness, and how we can learn to be more competitive. But one of the things I wanted to talk about is I wanted to kind of make it interactive. So what do you guys want to learn about competitiveness? Because one of the things that's hard for me is I've worked with thousands of athletes over probably 16, 17 years doing this. Okay? I've worked with pros all the way down to 8-year-old phenoms, right? And I've worked with all these teams. I've worked with Ohio State for 14 years. Worked with, you name it, I've worked with them. And what I want to know from you guys is, what do you want to get out of this speech? Because I think it's important. Anytime you go sit down and you listen to someone talk, you should have an idea of what you want to get out. So if I know kind of ahead of time what you guys want to know, then I can kind of tailor what I talk about accordingly. Because I have stuff I want to talk about, but what questions do you have about competitiveness, particularly with goalies, with hockey, sports in general, about being a competitor? Yeah.
So I feel a lot of, especially all of these except for one are the 16-year-olds, that they in general don't know how to practice and give that extra effort on being competitive within a drill, within a team environment, within themselves,
Okay.
whether it's at practice or here working out. Some guys do, but a lot of don't understand or don't have the self-awareness to know how am I going to be competitive? Why should I be competitive?
Okay.
What's important
That's
for
a
me?
good question. All right. So how to do that individually, how to get yourself motivated, right? How to prepare better, right? I'm sure that's something you would like to see them do, right? And I'm sure the parents, you want to see them more motivated on their own, right? You don't have to tell them to go do stuff. You don't have to tell them to stretch. You don't have to tell them to get rid of their stinky gear in the car, right? Like
We can't make that go away.
corpse in the back seat. Okay, so we can talk about that, right? How to stay motivated, how to get it going individually, because I think that's important. What about from the parents? You guys are the ones raising these athletes, carting them around, tournaments everywhere, right? What do you see in terms of competitiveness that you want to see improvements in? Or what's the hard part about being a parent of an athlete, maybe, in terms of that?
One of the things is how do you stay competitive over a long period of time? You know, whether it's a game, entire game, or a season, it's a long season.
Oh yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question. So I'm going to make sure I answer that, and I'll make sure I answer your question too. But the first thing I think is important, and how many of you guys are keeping journals, by the way? That's good. That's more than I would expect. That's good.
The guys that are here have a tendency to do a better job than guys that are not here.
So the guys that are not here are the ones that need to be watching the video.
Correct.
Yes.
Hi guys.
You guys get it live. You get the real stuff, right? Yeah. So the first way, I talk about working with so many athletes. What really separates the top athletes from the mediocre ones is how they prepare, how they train, right? And it's a competitive nature. I always tell people, when you see a competitive athlete, no matter what they're doing, if we're playing chess, they're going to want to beat you. Even if they don't know how to play chess. If they're playing checkers, they want to crush you. They might not know how to play checkers, right? If we go play field hockey, they've never touched a stick before in their life, they're going to want to kill you, right? That's a competitive nature, and that's something that can be instilled in people, but we don't see too much of it, right? So how do we do that without making the kids crazy, right? Without turning them into these wild men, right? These heathens. Still want them to be nice young gentlemen, right? Still want them to be presentable in public, things like that, right? Well-mannered. How do you instill competitiveness without going overboard? Because we've all seen people go overboard, right? The parents yelling at, 9-year-old soccer games, or I'm sure you guys have seen it as hockey parents, right? You scoot down the row a little bit, you don't want to sit next to them as much. A little too competitive, or the kid's a little too competitive. And you guys have seen it too. The people that take it too far, right? Starts getting dirty. And so how do you toe that line? I think that's a key, because the top athletes know how to toe that line. They really do. And so the first thing I think is going to be important for you guys to learn is you need to have goals with everything you do. It sounds silly, but everything related to hockey has to have a goal attached to it. How many of you guys already do that? Okay, that's my point, right? If you want to get better, you want to be better, you have to have goals for everything related to hockey. So what are all the activities related to hockey? Because obviously it's when you're in goal, right? When you're in net.
We got forwards in here too.
Okay,
And D.
all right. So what are all the activities related to hockey? This is your mute team, right?
Skating.
Skating, okay.
Conditioning.
Conditioning, okay. What else? You guys aren't gonna eat dinner if you don't eat.
Passing.
Passing. How about stretching?
Yeah,
Right?
Stretching.
Stretching part of hockey? Or you guys don't have to stretch, you're like cats, right? You just get up and jump, right? Just go.
2-6 water ball.
Yeah. Stretching, conditioning. What about rest? What about nutrition? Yeah. What about mental stuff? Yeah. You didn't realize how many areas go into being a good hockey player, did you? Right? And how many of you have goals for every single one of those categories? Probably not, right? That's why you're here. So the most competitive athletes, they do that with everything. Why? Because then everything they do has the reason behind it. And the reason is what? Why do we have goals for all these activities, including rest? Yeah.
So you can get better.
Get better. Yeah. You can get better. You can't get better if you don't know what you're measuring, if you don't know what you're doing. Right? So I call it intentional training. You're doing it on purpose. Right? That's very important. Everything related to hockey. Everything. Can you do it outside of hockey? Yeah. You ever get bored in class? Yep. You need better goals. Your goal is probably show up in class. Right? Go to school today. Right? Just show up. Mom and dad make you go to school. Right? But if you have a goal of getting an A in that class, if you have a goal of getting all A's, aren't you going to pay attention more? Yeah. Aren't you going to study more? Yeah. How many of you have goals for nutrition? Or do you just shove food in your face like all teenagers do? What's in the fridge? Right? You just grab something. Yeah. You think that has consequences? You think that's how pro athletes eat? No. No. Right? Because they have reasons behind everything they do. They have goals behind everything they do. And what happens when you start setting goals is it starts making everything a lot more fun. You get a lot more out of the activity because you're doing it on purpose instead of just going through the motions. Think about how many times you've gone to practice and just kind of lollygag. I can ask Dave, I'm sure he keeps track of that, right? He's a meticulous guy, okay? How many times have you stretched, but you're just stretching, right? You're not paying attention, you're just talking, right? Compared to stretching with intention, having goals for a stretching session, working on a specific area of your body that's tight, getting it ready for injury prevention, or eating, or resting. How many of you make sure you get enough rest every single night? How many of you bank sleep? Meaning you sleep a little bit more ahead of time for tournaments. Right? This is what the pros do. Try to take away sleep from a pro, and you're going to be pissed at you. Right? And so you don't have to act like a pro all the time. But if we're talking about getting more competitive, these are the kind of things that we want to instill. And these are good qualities to instill in kids in general, even if they're not in hockey or in any sport. It's good to have an idea of what you're going to get out of everything you do. And that's why anytime I talk to a crowd, I want you to know, what do you want to hear? What do you want to get out of my speech? Otherwise, we're just going through the motions. Right? And I tell people, every time you go to a speech, every time you read a book, every time you have a discussion with someone, you should know what you want to get out of it. That's being intentional. And so what I want you to do is have goals for everything you do related to hockey. So then you'll be more intentional about getting better. So what can some of those new goals be? What are some ideas? I know parents will have ideas. I know this guy has ideas. What can you work on? What goals can you add to your hockey training? Yeah.
Get more sleep.
Get more sleep.
Eat better.
Eat better. How about in your training, your weightlifting and your cardio and stuff like that? Can you get better than that? Can you have goals for that? Of course. You know, a good way to start is assess yourself in all these different areas. Nutrition, sleep, right? Cardio, technique, things like that. Assess yourself. Have coach assess you. Have mom and dad assess you. God knows they watch enough hockey, right? Have them assess you. 1 to 10, how am I in this area? You might be a 3, you might be a 4. How am I at my routine? Like how many of you guys have pre-routines, during routines, and post-routines with hockey? How many of you have those on purpose that you set up ahead of time? You have a specific way of doing things. That's what I'm saying. So can't that get better? Yeah. Even just something as simple as coming up with a good playlist that gets you in the right mood to play your best hockey, right? A good iTunes playlist. That could be something that could help you play better. So that's having goals for everything you do, right? So that's a good place to start. And so what I would suggest is